Speak Student!
Beowulf a la Shmoop. Material goods. If you haven't noticed yet, there's a lot of things, material wealth and stuff, in Beowulf. Beowulf recovers items from Grendel's mother's lair. Hrothgar rewards him handsomely multiple times, and now we have a big trove of treasure guarded by, what else? A dragon. So, question. Talk to us about the importance of material goods in Beowulf. What are they? How do they function? And how do they get discovered? Are there mines that they're like digging in, and how does all that work?
Material stuff has been cropping up, throughout this whole story. We see goblets all over the mead hall. This is the equivalent of having, what do you call it when you have the gold
grill?
The grill. There we go.
Yeah, Ryan Lochte.
It's the equivalent of having grill is having goblets all over your mead hall. Yeah. The men have these tons of armor all blinged out. The women are wearing tons of jewelry. When Beowulf kills Grendel, Hrothgar, in addition to these gnomes that we talked about, gives him so many things. He gives him horses, he gives him a kingly saddle, he gives him a sword and a shield and like all this stuff. So clearly it's important. And again, it reflects the cultural values of the time. We look at this and we're like, oh, they were greedy. Theme of greed in Beowulf. But it's not. That's just how things worked back then. Having these material goods were a sign of your success and your wealth. Now, if you walked into someone's house and they had goblets everywhere, you might, or in this case, dollar bills making it rain, you might think, oh, they're greedy, but that's not what we're supposed to think. We're supposed to think, oh, they're successful. It's a good thing, it's respected.
Why do you think that's the case? When I think about this era, I think about resources, like just living, having food reliably and water reliably available and protection from the elements and disease and God knows what else. It was like an achievement, like blowing out your birthday candles was something that came because life was so hard, and that was only a couple hundred years ago that tradition started, that you still had breath strong enough to blow out your candles, so you celebrated another year of life. In this era, my goodness, it must have been very hard. So I get the materiality mattering, and it wasn't dollar bills, it was like goblets for water.
Right, and the materiality matters, and you have to remember that, again, we're not talking about everyday people, we're talking about kings here, right? So things like a goblet or a sword or jewels were a way for a king to say, make an alliance, instead of just kind of shaking someone's hand and saying yes, we're good. Gentleman's agreement. We don't do that today either. We sign contracts. And the way that they did it to have alliances was to give gifts among each other and give material things instead of just saying yeah, we're good. And it was important to kind of have that, as we brought up earlier, that symbol of a connection. But in Beowulf, there's a tension because, again, reflecting the cultural values, material things being good and respected, but when the story was written down, the Christian values had really come into play. And as we know from the Bible, you're not supposed to value worldly things. You're supposed to, value the otherworldly, not the worldly. And so we do see this tension. Some of the gnomes that Hrothgar says to Beowulf are about, value eternal life, kind of you can't take it with you idea. So we do see the tension, and if you're if you're confused while you're reading Beowulf, you're supposed to be, because there is a tension between pagan and Christian values, valuing what's worldly and what's material versus completely pushing all that aside to value the otherworldly.
What are some of the material goods talked about in Beowulf? What's the purpose of the display of wealth and all the glitzy gifts? Why is there a tension between materiality and immateriality in Beowulf? How is this tension shown in reading the story?
Yes, we're good.